Welcome to the Dice Tower's coverage of the Gamma Trade Show 2013, aka Tom and Eric Go to Vegas, in which we bring you the latest board game news from the show.
Hey folks, welcome to yet another video in our Gamma Trade Show series. This one I think though is very interesting. The hottest topic at the Gamma Trade Show this year by far was Kickstarter, because Kickstarter has really just become a major force in the hobby. They even had a special session on Kickstarter at the convention, which the convention itself recorded, and maybe we'll have a chance to see that later on. But there's a lot of opinions. Now, the ones I'm about to show you are from the manufacturers and distributors and things like that, and so they might be skewed slightly towards the positive side. The retailers weren't as excited about Kickstarter. Some of them, the opposite of excited. And so as time goes by, maybe I'll get a chance to show you a more balanced view of Kickstarter. But I think there's a lot of good things that we'll see here, and there's even a scoop on a new game coming out. So let's get to these guys and see what they have to say about Kickstarter.
I love it. I think it's, I hate using the term, but it's a game changer. It's the purest medium for creatives and fans to come together and prove a product to market. So, and it's also got a great culture going on with it too. So the people who are into Kickstarter and who back Kickstarter products usually do so based on the passion of the creator and the idea that creators are doing cool niche products that either big studios, big publishers are understandably not that willing to risk a lot of money on. So I think it's a great idea. Like it's the love of games or music, or in our case games. It's the love of games directly from creators to fans.
Kickstarter is a hot topic. How does Kickstarter fit into the industry? It's definitely here to stay, and it's a part of it, and it affects distributors, it affects game publishers, it certainly affects retailers, and because it's controversial, you've got areas of the industry that love it and areas that hate it, and so it's like I said, it's a hot topic right now. That's a big change.
Where do you stand?
It depends on the game, and it depends on how the Kickstarter campaign is handled. There have been Kickstarter campaigns like Zombicide, which have done very well at retail. And there are Kickstarter campaigns for games that have bypassed distribution and retail, and it has served as a vehicle to basically sell directly to players. Retailers and distributors get our feathers ruffled about that, because it's cutting out business that we could be making. So yeah, it's an interesting scenario to be in.
Since we just had two very successful Kickstarter programs, I guess I'm all over loving it. But I also own 3 game stores in the Milwaukee area, so we got to taper that with do we want so much product, and can it sell in the store after a Kickstarter? And usually a good product will still have life after Kickstarter, and so that's a good thing. It gets good product to the market where a lot of manufacturers may not have the time or energy to devote to a product that still would do well, so they turn it down because they just don't have time in their future to make it. So Kickstarter, I think, in general, is overall a very good thing for the industry.
Yes, I think it's, I believe everybody's doing something to promote the games. Well, like earlier when websites came and blogs came to show, to explain new games, people say, oh, they grow like mushrooms, okay? But it's very good for the whole market. Everybody is involved. So Kickstarter also, I think you get a lot of non-gamers taking interest, and with the help of like Dice Tower and other online reviewers, they explain the game in advance sometimes. So I think it's very good for the market, very good for the gaming industry. So.
Well, Kickstarter, in my opinion, is not as revolutionary as it sounds. It's a popular and a hip thing right now, that's for sure. But from my perspective, it is a fancy pre-order program. Pre-order programs are not new. GMT is known for having pioneered the P500 program a decade ago, and we did the same thing. We had something called a game plan for a long time. This year, we decided to try Kickstarter as a slightly different method to generate pre-orders in advance. But having said that I see it the same as a pre-order, I've been very pleasantly surprised with some of the positive feedback that I've gotten and some of the customers that have come out of the woodwork, so to speak, to support and back my project. Our first project is a game called Napoleon, and my father first published Napoleon in 1974, and then it became very well known when it was licensed to Avalon Hill for a run back in the early 80s, and then it came back to Columbia Games eventually once they were finished with it. So our current Kickstarter project is a new 4th edition of Napoleon, and we've been very pleasantly surprised with how well received it's been in the marketplace and how quickly it has been funded. We didn't ask for a lot. We asked for $14,000 to produce the game, and we hit that in 4 days. I was really impressed with that. It's the first time I've ever seen anything that fast. And we're cruising now to well past double of that, and we're using that now with the premise of stretch goals to improve the game. And that to me is the other cool part of Kickstarter, is that once you make your goal, you try to improve on it and improve the product. And that also has a real positive psychological effect on people. They want to back projects and improve and be part of a superior product. So yeah, I would say that it's been a real pleasant learning experience for us. This is our first Kickstarter, and we still got 25 days to go on it. So we'll see how it really turns out at the end. That'll be exciting. But I'm impressed so far. Coming back to how it affects the overall business, I think it fits with the statement I made earlier about a proliferation of new games. It's amplified that even more. Now you're seeing even more new creative product come out. But the Kickstarter model is a perfect market test. It tells a person, a publisher, a prospective designer, whether their idea has any real marketable merit. Because ideas are a dime a dozen, we like to say, but marketable ideas that you can actually finish and execute on and get people to pay you for. And then in exchange for that, you give them something that they want to have and they have fun with, and it spreads. That's a little harder to pull off, but Kickstarter, it kind of gives you a chance to find out if that's going to happen before you spend take all the risks. So I'm seeing that.
I think Kickstarter is a great resource, especially for up-and-comers who are trying to get that exposure and get that funding to make their vision a reality. Their user interface is very good. Their exposure is very good. I really have nothing bad to say about them, other than from a new Kickstarter standpoint, there is a bit of a learning curve on how to get your name out there and how to get the right exposure and all the build-up you need to put in before you launch your Kickstarter, and then all the work you have to do during the Kickstarter, because you really only have about 30 days usually to make it happen and get that exposure, and then your rewards and things like that have to be adequate or excite people, and then your pledge, stretch goals have to be, something that excites people and gets them telling their friends about it, so that you get even more people involved so you can meet those stretch goals.
Since I have run about 8 Kickstarters now, all successful, and the last few of them doing about 100,000, people have been starting to approach me and go, "Hey, what's the trick, James? What's the trick?" Well, so I did some blogging online about it, and people are really excited about that, and helps everybody out. But then more and more people started approaching me, and then some bigger companies started approaching me, and I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I should probably do it in a more official way. So I started a company to help people get their Kickstarter products online. Because if you're doing a Kickstarter, there's 2 major things. One is you got to have a network of people before you even start. It's a grassroots kind of a thing. You try to grab everybody. If you put the best product up there and say, "Hey, everybody will notice it," and nobody notices it. it's all about networking and grassroots and social power out there. So we bring a lot of that to the market ourselves with our own past experience with the different events.
Well, it's great. I mean, it rewards your fans immediately. You know what you can afford to give away according to how many fans you have. It helps elevate the awareness of your game, and it provides marketing for your distributors and retailer. Everybody wins.
What are the disadvantages to running a Kickstarter project that goes into the millions?
Well, everybody watch you do it, right? I mean, there's no, you have no secret sauce that you can, people follow you. So you just got to do better each time. I mean, I went to business school and I learned that, there's a business life cycle. You go from here and then you go to a point and then your competition will come in later, but your competition coming right now to where you're at because of the communication, the internet and all that, you just got to make sure that you have the next best thing lined up.
Kickstarter to me is the beginning place. It's where you go to get started. It is an amazing amount of work to get started in the sense of both feeding Kickstarter, managing the campaign. All of that is a lot of work, and then the real work starts, which is actually bringing the product to reality, and then finding a market for that product. Because the Kickstarter community is the beginning of the process. It's definitely not the end-all be-all. As far as learnings go, be enthusiastic, be yourself, and be genuine. Make sure that what you're presenting you really believe in, and that this is something that you really want to do, because there are going to be times where you'll be tested.
Kickstarter is for a small publisher, and my true beliefs is even for larger publishers, if they use it properly, it is the best marketing tool that you can do for your games. It gives the opportunity to show the retailer that there's a demand for a product, something that we were never able to do before, right? So by offering the product on Kickstarter and it being successful, what happens is that we can go back to the retailer and say, we have a successful product for you to put on your store shelf. We know it's successful, and this is why. So Kickstarter is one of those things where I can prove demand if I use it properly, and any small publisher can prove demand for their product if they use it properly. And the other thing that it happens with it is that Kickstarter is the only marketing program that you can actually utilize that pays you, right? Anytime I go and buy an ad out, for a magazine, or if I do an ad on the web, I have to pay into it, and it's very hard for me to measure how well it's doing. Kickstarter is direct, right? I see how well it's doing right away. I can see what people like and what they don't like about the product. I can make the tweaks, and afterwards, right, when I go back to make the presentation to the distributor and to the retailer, I can show the demands for the product. So it's an excellent tool for any publisher to be utilizing.
Fifth Street wouldn't exist without it. It has helped small companies like myself or Dice Hate Me and so forth get that initial footing to get the initial print runs and out the door. The argument has been made that it steals initial sales from hobby stores, and I'd say it really depends on the game. At the game store I work at, Zombicide, and then a $90 game, and you could argue, or following that argument, oh, everyone who backed it has already bought it, so no one's going to buy it at the game store. We can't keep Zombicide in stock. Whereas other Kickstarter titles, and I won't name specific names, we bring in one or two, and they just sit for a while. It's just like any new release, really. It's really idiosyncratic, just as to the game itself. But I think it's overall good for the industry.
Well, Kickstarter, that's interesting you asked the question. We are actually just about to launch a project. Actually, it's a scoop. It's the first time we talk about it. So we are working on a superhero comic game that we're going to put on Kickstarter within the next, I would say, weeks or something like that. And so we are very excited. We are very interested in Kickstarter. It's going to be a new vehicle for us. But I think it has great potential for getting a sense of what the market wants and how you must direct your product according to the feedback you get from the Kickstarter, because that's great. It's giving you feedback during the genesis of a product, so it's awesome because you really deliver what the market is asking for. It is called Guardians Chronicles. The designer is a French designer called Frédéric Condet.
I think if I could have accessed Kickstarter instead of putting my house on a second mortgage to launch my first game and going to a significant debt, I absolutely would have done it. I think it's a terrific way for companies to kind of get into the market where they might not have been able to do so. I think one of the dangers of Kickstarter is when you don't put your house on second mortgage, you may not put enough time into all the development, so it may not be ready when you decide to launch it. And when it's your house on the line, by God, you got to make sure it is the best thing you can produce. It's great, and it's potentially not terrific.
Do you plan to use it in the future?
Here's the thing: Smirk and Dagger itself doesn't need to use it. I have a great business. I'm able to print my own games. I see decent volume as soon as I release a title. I've got a pretty big fan base. So unless it's a really specialty project, I don't think so. It seems a little ingenuine for me to do it. And I'm not sure if I see the benefit. It upsets retailers, and I fear a little backlash from fans. That said, I would do it for something that's a special project. And I may consider doing it if I were to launch a separate line. But for Smirk and Dagger, no, I don't think it's right.
Well, I used to say we were entering sort of a new golden age of games, and really, honestly, you can go back and start the clock with Catan hitting American stores, and I think we still are. I'm a little nervous now, and I know this is going to make a lot of people angry, but I'm a little nervous about Kickstarter and what it's bringing in terms of the volume of games. It's great that everybody can make their own stuff, but I'm a little concerned that people are able to fund things that aren't necessarily that great, and that makes it much harder for the consumer when they walk in to know what to get. If these games are on a shelf, it's already a bit overwhelming for some people in a game store. It's hard to know what you're going to like, what kind of thing you're going to want to play. Has it been tested? Is it really all that fun? Makes it harder for everybody, but on the other hand, we get gems and wonderful diamonds popping out. So it's a catch-22, I think. I think it'll settle out. I think things that are good will rise to the top. We'll see things that start as Kickstarters becoming mainstream published games, and some other ones will fade away. But the things that are really good that will last, people are going to love for a long time. So that's exciting.
I think overall it's good for the gaming industry. I think early on there were a lot of kind of mediocre games that were kind of being thrown up on Kickstarter, and I think now that we're in like the third, fourth year of Kickstarter, you're seeing like a lot of these person came up with a game in their garage and throws it up. Like those games kind of aren't funding anymore, and you're seeing there's getting to be a little more discrimination. But there still are some pretty good games going up on some of these Kickstarter projects. I just think the audience over time is starting to get a little bit more discerning and saying oh, it's a zombie game, but I've already seen 4 zombie games, so maybe on this one I'll actually see whether it's got some quality to it before I pledge a donation.
Well, it used to be where half our new business was coming to Gamma trade show and meeting people. The other half was going to Gen Con and going to people's booths. Now Kickstarter has made making board and card games so accessible, so much faster for game publishers that honestly most of these publishers are like, oh yeah, my game's funded, I got to get distribution. And so because some of our existing clients are on Kickstarter, and of course because we send email inquiries to people. We can't keep up, actually. I turn away people all the time. There's too much. And some people ask, they're like, well, why can't you grow? Why don't you get a bigger warehouse? Why don't you get more employees? It doesn't work that way anyway. I've tried that before, but that's a whole other conversation. But it's, we keep it very tightly focused to about 60 game publishers that we work with. And, they're always churning. There's always people going out of business, I'm sorry to say, or not selling enough. But Kickstarter is just a great pool to get new business. But again, there's so much right now. There's no need to just sit there and start inquiring to people, because now it's just through word of mouth. They say, oh, you can talk to Impressions, you can talk to whomever else.
I really find this interesting to see just really how people treat Kickstarter. Obviously, for the most part, everyone was very positive about it. And I do think there's a lot of positive things that Kickstarter is doing for the hobby. Is there negative side effects to it? Yeah. And is there growing pains to how we work with it? Yes. Obviously, I believe in it, that I put my first game up on Kickstarter and I kickstarted our show. I think that it's worthwhile, so I'm kind of on that side. But I invite others who have opposing viewpoints to come on the show. I like to show a whole, wide range to see where our hobby's headed down the road. Whether you hate Kickstarter or not, it certainly is part of our hobby at this point, and so it'll be interesting to see where that leads us in the days ahead. One more video in this series talking about exactly what GTS is anyway, and why you should go if you have a chance.
Thanks for watching The Dice Tower. Join us next time for more news from the show.